The massive tortoise hadn't moved in weeks, until a frail girl in a red dress whispered his name. He rose, trembling, and took a single step, then another, and ate from her hand. Staff froze, tears in their eyes, but what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Each night, Dr. Reeves returned to Tank's enclosure long after the rest of the staff had gone home. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the heat lamps and the occasional rustle of hay. Tank remained curled deep within his shell, motionless under the warm light, a shadow of the proud, plodding giant he once was. Natalie would sit beside him cross-legged on the concrete floor, her back aching, legs stiff, but she refused to rush him. Her presence wasn't medical anymore. It was personal. She brought him his favorites, not just strawberries, but hibiscus petals, mango slices, even banana peels he used to crunch with noisy delight. But they all sat untouched, every time. It was as if the part of him that understood joy had gone dormant, buried somewhere unreachable. "He's shutting down," whispered Andrea, one of the junior caretakers, wiping at her face with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. "I think his heart's broken." No one contradicted her. Tank wasn't just another animal. He'd been there through hurricanes, funding crises, staff changes. He was part of the center's soul, and now that soul was flickering. Natalie reviewed every chart, every scan, every test. His vitals were sluggish but not failing. No infection, no visible trauma. But emotionally, spiritually, he was wasting away. She spoke with behaviorists, tortoise experts, even monks who specialized in animal grieving. The consensus was uncertain but unanimous in tone. Animals feel loss, and Tank had lost something, someone no scan could detect. One evening, she did something unscientific. She brought in a small fleece blanket, the same kind the child used to sit on during her weekly visits with Tank. She laid it beside his enclosure without a word. Then she sat in silence. Minutes passed, then an hour. A subtle shift, so small she almost missed it. Tank's head inched forward, barely visible in the enclosure's dim light. His nostrils flared, not a full emergence, but something primal stirred. His eyes, usually dull and shuttered, opened. Slowly, his gaze locked on the blanket. Natalie didn't move. Her throat tightened. It wasn't hope, not yet, but it was motion, awareness, recognition. For the first time in weeks, Tank was seeing the world again, and he hadn't looked away. The moment Natalie ended the call, she sat frozen at her desk, the hum of the office light seeming suddenly louder, harsher. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, still warm from dialing, but her thoughts raced ahead of her body. Emily hadn't forgotten. She dreamed of Tank. After nearly a year, that couldn't be coincidence. Natalie pulled the logbook closer, flipping back to the entry from that day with a kind of reverence. There, scrawled in Andrea's looping cursive, were the small, overlooked details. Emily laughed every time Tank bumped her shoe. He wouldn't leave her side. When she left, he tried to follow her to the gate. Tank had chosen her. Out of thousands of children over the years, some frightened, some gleeful, most forgettable, he had chosen Emily. And the day she stopped coming was the day he stopped being. Natalie leaned back, struck by a quiet, unsettling clarity. This wasn't an issue of appetite or illness. It was longing, recognition, a connection unspoken, yet deeply etched into both their lives. It was the kind of thing science couldn't measure, but grief understood intimately. In the days that followed, Natalie couldn't stop replaying the look in Tank's eyes the night he stirred at the sight of that blanket. Not hope exactly, more like reaching, as if part of him had been scanning the world for someone he couldn't name, and for a moment thought he might have found her. She began to notice other things in Tank's enclosure. He'd drag himself, just a few inches, toward the fence during visiting hours, even though the school tours had long since been suspended. He sniffed at little red flecks on passing backpacks or picnic blankets, then turned away, disappointed. The color red, a child's voice. A melody hummed under breath. These were not arbitrary triggers. They were memory fragments Tank clung to, quietly, insistently. Natalie started asking herself the question that hovered like a specter over everything. What if Tank hadn't given up on Emily? What if he'd just been waiting for her to come back? And now, Emily was still alive, recovering, dreaming of him. The facts defied logic, yet the story was undeniable. Two souls, one human, one animal, had collided in a fleeting moment that neither had truly left behind. And Natalie, for the first time in weeks, felt a shift within herself too, not scientific certainty, but purpose. No one spoke, not at first. Even the usual hum of the filtration system, the distant calls of birds from the sanctuary aviary, the scrape of trays from the vet wing, all of it seemed to fall away as Tank, inch by labored inch, moved toward the girl in red. The silence in the enclosure was reverent, almost sacred, as though everyone watching understood, without needing to say a word, that something extraordinary was unfolding. Tank's front foot thudded against the ground, then the next. Each movement sent ripples across the muscles in his massive limbs, a creature carved from living stone, reanimating after months of stillness. Natalie could barely breathe. She had been trained in animal physiology, not miracles. And yet, here it was, slow, undeniable, and walking straight into the arms of a dying child. Emily, for her part, said nothing either. Her eyes were wide, not with fear or even joy, but a kind of awe that made her seem older than her years. Her little hand trembled as she held out the orange slice, its bright color a flash of summer in the pale winter of her fingers. Tank lowered his head. One long moment, then his jaw opened, deliberate, trusting, and he ate. A sob caught in someone's throat, maybe Natalie's, maybe Emily's mother's, but no one dared move. The weight of what they were witnessing pinned them all in place. Dr. Liao, one of the newer staff veterinarians, leaned against the doorframe, stunned. "This doesn't happen," he muttered under his breath. "Animals don't do this. Not like this." Natalie couldn't look away. "They do," she whispered back. "We just don't know how to measure it." Tank was chewing slowly now, eyes half-lidded, utterly calm. Emily reached out and gently touched the ridges of his shell. He didn't flinch. Instead, he nudged her hand with his snout, an echo of the same motion he'd done nearly a year ago, the last time he'd seen her. It was like time folded in on itself, like nothing in the world had changed, except that everything had. Natalie turned, blinking back tears, and caught sight of the staff who had all gathered. The skeptical groundskeeper, the shy intern, even the director who'd nearly signed off on transferring Tank to a more clinical facility. Now, every one of them was motionless, watching something bigger than any treatment plan or textbook could explain. No one could deny it now. Tank hadn't needed medicine. He needed her. By the third week, Tank had resumed basking in the sun, nibbling at kale and sweet potato without coaxing, but only if Emily was there to sit beside him. If she missed a day, he slowed again, barely touching his food until she returned. The pattern was undeniable. This wasn't coincidence or even routine. It was a relationship, a bond neither time nor illness had severed. Glenwood Wildlife Rescue rearranged its schedule to accommodate her. Emily now came every Tuesday and Friday, bundled in a knit hat and scarf, cheeks still pale but brightened with anticipation. She'd wheel herself across the gravel paths until she reached the Tortoise enclosure, where Tank would already be waiting. He began rising earlier in the day, often shuffling to the edge of the habitat before she arrived, head lifted toward the entry gate as though listening for the wheels of her chair. Those days became their ritual. She'd bring him little offerings, sliced mango, zucchini blossoms, once even a small plush turtle she'd won from a hospital raffle. Tank didn't care for the toy, but he sniffed it carefully before nudging it aside to nose at her hand instead. She read to him now, books about animals, poems, sometimes just her own journal entries whispered aloud. And as Tank strengthened, so did she. Emily's mother noticed it first, how the girl's appetite returned, how the circles under her eyes began to fade, how the energy she once spent just getting through the day was now channeled into drawing pictures of Tank, planning what snacks to bring him, laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. "It's like he's giving her something medicine can't," her mother told Natalie. "She says they're healing each other." Word got out, naturally, but for once the headlines weren't intrusive. They were reverent. Human interest journalists came with soft voices and respectful lenses. They didn't want tragedy. They wanted truth. Something rare. Something redemptive. Natalie stood beside the camera crew during one of Emily's interviews, arms folded tight against the chill. When they asked what Tank meant to her, Emily didn't hesitate. Her voice was clear, quiet, but steady. "He remembered me when I thought the whole world forgot." And in that one sentence, she gave words to something everyone there had felt but hadn't dared to name. This wasn't just about survival. It was about being seen, being held, even when everything else falls away. And for both of them, Emily and Tank, it was a second chance at life.